What's wrong with America? Yet another mass shooting in this great nation, and to the last man, the mainstream media are yet again looking for solutions in all the wrong places. Gun control is not the answer, because that horse has bolted. There are more than 300 million guns in America, and they are not going to give them up. Demanding gun control now, when what the left really means is confiscation, is completely impractical and unworkable. It's not a solution. But it's also not the problem. Killing 4 or more people without a cooling off period is not a high-tech problem. We see many examples around the world where vehicles, knives and explosives are used easily when a politically motivated and or mentally deranged person is determined to inflict maximum terror and carnage. In fact, of all the mass shootings in America in the last 35 years, around 2 in 3 have been perpetrated by people with pathological mental disorders, between 62 and 68%. If the mainstream media wanted real solutions instead of political virtue signalling, they should look to promote better mental health care in the USA. To argue that taking guns off law-abiding firearms owners is a simple silver bullet to solving gun crime is intellectually dishonest and little more than opportunistic grandstanding. There's a much more obvious problem going on in America, and it's much harder to fix, which is probably one of the reasons why comparatively cheap rhetoric about tokenistic reductions in personal liberty is so popular. The heart of the matter is the matter of the heart. In response to the church mass shooting in Charleston in 2015, Dr. Ben Carson observed that the young shooter didn't wake up that day and suddenly turn into a maniac. He said that there were clearly things in his background, in his upbringing, that led to the mentality that would allow him to do something like that. He continued that one of the things that Americans really need to start concentrating on in that country is once again instilling the right kind of values, particularly in their young people. Once upon a time, students were taught citizenship and personal responsibility. But now they're taught that they're all victims of something, the patriarchy, capitalism, colonization, discrimination, and that they have to fight for their rights. We've been taught that creating a better society is achieved by adversarial activism instead of by becoming better people and improving ourselves. Whatever we believe and however we behave is an intrinsic part of our identity, and mere disagreement has become personal violence, justifying violent responses. Free speech has become hate speech, and truth has become a tool of the oppressor instead of a mutual pursuit. And though this all began perhaps centuries ago as philosophers started doubting if the chair is really there, it coalesced and escalated rapidly when America began to mutate their freedom of religion into an unhealthy fetish for freedom from religion. Once upon a time, the Pledge of Allegiance was a symbol of humility and accountability. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now it's little more than lip service, having completely excluded God from government, magnifying racial and other social divisions, and liberty and justice only if you achieve more intersectionality, victim identity points, than the person who offended your precious sensibilities. Americans religiously removed the Bible from schools and wondered why people forgot that thou shalt not murder. They banned prayer from schools and dogmatically prosecuted coaches that led their teams in prayer, and wondered why the youth became more and more hopeless and content to take matters into their own hands, entirely devoid of any actual wisdom. Americans stopped teaching their kids that each of us was created by and in the image of God, and instead offered the doctrine that each of us is the random result of chaos, of no more value than a mere descendant of animals. They now wonder why people behave like animals, raping and murdering without compunction. Marriage is no longer a sacred promise or the unique relationship capable of perpetuating the human race. Divorce became a solution to falling in love with someone else instead of a reluctant resort in cases of adultery or abuse. The government's promise to subsidise fatherless children has correlated with an exponential increase in fatherlessness. Now, up to 85% of prisoners are from fatherless homes. 63% of youth suicides are from fatherless homes. 71% of high school dropouts are from fatherless homes, and 75% of adolescents in rehab are from fatherless homes. Daughters are more than 7 times more likely to have children as teenagers, and 92% more likely to have a failed marriage themselves when they grow up in a fatherless home. Despite the ugly social scars of rejecting God's design for marriage and family, Americans think they know best and redefine marriage and family in a continued exercise of navel-gazing, self-referenced authority. The unelected and activist judiciary in America decided that mothers have a legal right to kill their unborn babies, then wondered why the nation killing 1 million children a year had a growing culture of death. Their culture embraced rapid increase in gratuitous and realistically detailed violence towards women, children, and even police in computer games for teens, TV shows, and Hollywood, and then lamented the increase in real violence towards women, children, and even police. The message America bombards each person with is that God is optional. All laws are just simply because the majority said so. There is no accountability in this life or the next. There is no truth but your own. You have no public responsibility and every personal right you can imagine, except to disagree with someone's personal truth. Human life is disposable property if you're preborn, and worthless if you're depressed, elderly, suffering, or a Nazi, which is anybody who has beliefs you find objectionable. When Jimmy Kimmel insists that anybody who disagrees with him about the political solution to mass shootings is being bribed by the NRA and a heartless puppet of the gun lobby, he is claiming a superior authority to define morality and sincerity. He is part of the mainstream media narrative that there is no moral compass besides the media. There is no absolute truth, and that God and the basic Christian value that all men are created equal under God has no place in American culture. And that is the problem. If only they'd live by it. America's national motto is the solution. In God we trust. America does not have a gun problem. America has a culture problem.